Hello, it is May 26, 2024, and I just completed reading Confucius The Analects. And this is very good, brilliant. Um, it's basically in a few different sections, and the introduction that this book has is outstanding. You should definitely read the introduction. A lot of books, you got, kind of skim the introduction a little bit and find it's not really that necessary. It's just a person's opinion of a novel or something of that effect. But this introduction gives you a great framework to what the book is and the philosophies of Confucius when you get to them. It's quite a long introduction, but it's totally worth it. And I would even go to say that without reading it, it's 55 pages, the introduction. Without reading it, you will not fully appreciate the quotations. So, who is Confucius? When you get into the actual quotes, you start wondering what's the history of the guy. And then after you get past all of the quotations, there's these sections at the back that you should also read. The first one is the events in the life of Confucius. That's very important. It gets into who he was, whether he was at all, and a couple of historical reports of who he was that may be accurate or may be inaccurate. And it also gets into some things that were attributed to him that were probably not true. So, in any case, when someone becomes very important, a lot of people try to put words in their mouth, and that seems to have happened with him also. So, if you don't read some of these appendices at the end, you won't fully understand him as a person. And obviously, he lived a long time ago. So, basically, what we know of him is through his quotes of his followers or disciples. And anyone that's Christian or from Western government, you might initially think, well, why should I read a person from China that's maybe has opposing viewpoints to some of the things you believe, but it's not really true. He's not really opposing anything in Christianity. So I'll just give you that right there. There's no reason to not read the sayings of Confucius. He basically supports the good things that Christians believe in. A very big section of this is benevolence. So Christians are supposed to do good things for other people, and that's real high on the list of Confucius. So no problem there. The only possible critique that people have of Confucius is by default it's connected to China. Therefore, if you're an American, you have to think it's bad, right? Now, while the Chinese government reveres Confucius because of his probably his views on the caste structure of levels of citizenry in China, that could be a little bit of a criticism of Confucius, is that he supports this leveled structure of people where you've got the leaders and then you kind of got the followers in there, and they're supposed to kind of toe the line a little bit more than you would hear about in America, where we are free to say what we want and not just blindly do what we're told. There may be more of the kind of like know your place, therefore follow. And that would be the criticism of Confucius. It's valid. But the benevolence and the constant learning that he supports as becoming enlightened is a very important thing that we don't hear about enough in America. That you're on an educational journey from day one, and that you never achieve knowledge, but you're trying to. And a lot of it is discussing people that don't try to get out of their problems. They don't realize the dilemmas that they're in, and they don't even try to figure out why they're in the dilemmas that they're in, and therefore they're kind of stuck in that rut. And if they were to stop and think and try to elevate themselves, they could change their circumstance and perhaps their lineage, their future children. And one of the things that's interesting is the philosophies of putting so much importance on work, hard work, and education and learning. Is this man is part of the reason that the Asian culture in general really, really, really pay a lot of attention to their educational path and becoming properly educated. And I really, really respected that out of this book because I've adopted that with my family, and my children are prospering because of the amount of hard work that they did throughout their elementary, middle, high school, and college. And they're succeeding because of the amount of hard work that they put into it. And this is really, really supported by Confucius. So benevolence, hard work, learning, basically is if you walk with 2 or 3 people, you're going to learn something from them no matter what. And whether if it's a good thing, you try to adopt it. If it's a bad thing, then you look at yourself and think, am I partially doing those things, and how do I avoid that? Yeah, and I'm in a dilemma here because this book, I'm probably going to stick back on the shelf, but what I should have done, since most of the Analects is his quotations, I should have really, but I didn't know I was going to keep the book, but I'm going to go back actually and highlight the pieces in this that I really, really liked the best and put it up on my bookshelf. Because one of the things it was trying to, a lot of people, they hear things and then they instantly adopt it. He discusses that. So if you hear something from a person or a group, if some of it sounds suspicious, immediately take care of it. Just get that out of there. If a small percentage of it sounds possible, it doesn't even enter into the possibility of entering your mind as fact until you do your visual, which is doing your research. And then if you find out through written sources that are considered to be relevant and accurate, then you adopt them. So hearing, not so much. Seeing is learning, which is reading the appropriate approved documentation and then adopting it so that you live that information. So I really, really, really like this. Now, so back to the question on who he was, a lot of what we know about him is only through those statements. So his timeline is kind of established, but not fully. There's 2 different, in the back here in the appendices, there's 2 different veins of how he came up and whether or not he was a statesman or not. And the other way was if he was just like an enlightened person that kind of got these followers, and then how many disciples he had. There's an appendices on his disciples, and there's other books that are written that kind of discuss who they are. They got a pretty nailed down chronology of him living in either 551 or 552. He was born and then died around 479. And it was interesting that apparently he had a head injury from birth, where his head was like concave in the middle, like a hole in it or something. So you got to wonder, was he, like autistic or something of that nature, where he had a lot of knowledge that other people perhaps didn't have. He was doing very disciplined stuff at a young age, but he's not a religious leader per se, right? He would not be considered to be like, a Buddha or Christ or anybody like that. Just kind of an intelligent person who had a lot of frustration with his enlightened belief system was referred to as the way. And he basically was frustrated because no matter who you explain it to or tell about, that society is still ultimately not going to adopt it, and they're not going to change. And that is the dilemma of humankind, is that there are multitudes of better things that we can do, and we don't really do them when we could do things a lot better than we are now. And that is frustrating for a person, that's enlightened or intellectual. But nonetheless, for your personal journey, whether or not this changes society or not, or has, I mean, at minimum, it's taught an awful lot of people to place high importance on education. And if nothing else, it's good for reading for that purpose. If you have a young child that's starting school or about to, you may want to read this now, just to put yourself in the proper mindset about how do I elevate, my future generation. You want your descendants to do better than you, right? They always want to upward mobile. So this would be a good start prior to your looking up of the process of properly educating your children. This would be a good springboard for that. And if you've already been through that process, it's still a good thing to look at, just to kind of adopt some more of his philosophies and better yourself. So I really liked it, going to keep it on my bookshelf, and I don't do that very often. So outstanding piece of literature, Confucius the Analects.